Welcome along to the final of the three great tours of the 2004 season. This is the 59th running of the Vuelta España. I'm Phil Liggett, joined by Paul Sherwin. Sit back now and enjoy the highlights of what was an excellent event. The race itself starting from Lyon, right in the far northwest corner of Spain, going across the top of the country, then down. But this route particularly hilly this year. Many of the riders on the 21 teams saying that it is possibly too hilly. It's certainly one for the climbers. 187 riders will take the start, by the way, and the big surprise is that Francesco Casagrande out on the pre-race test for blood levels too high in hematocrit, and he's gone home. Vastly disappointed for him, because he was saying this was his big aim of the year. Well, we're looking now at the route for the opening team time trial. And just 27.7 kilometres. The first man across the line on the winning team will be the first wearer of the golden jersey, Paul, not a yellow jersey.
Well, the fastest team at the moment is Fassa Bortolo with a time of 32 minutes and 10 seconds. But Il Baleares, the former Banesto squad, are coming in here, Phil, with a storming ride.
Yes, well, at the time taken on the fifth rider as usual, and it's a very good ride for Ils Baleares. Of course, this is a very important race for them, the former Banesto squad. And this is now the arrival of T-Mobile, and they too look set now to upset the leaderboard. I think this is to be expected from T-Mobile. They pulled in some good riders here and given Cadel Evans a ride in the Tour of Spain as well. Best time so far, 25 seconds to the good.
Well, it's a good ride by T-Mobile. They're trying to, I think, ride a little bit better than they did at the Tour de France, but this has never really been their best discipline. But this is the discipline of the US Postal Service. And as they were at the Tour de France, Phil, posting very fast times out on the course, and I think they're going to really knock spots off T-Mobile.
Well, they love riding team time trials, even without Lance Armstrong, who is about to wind down his season back home in the US. But this is a very strong team here, and they have major ambitions in the Vuelta España. Mostly stage wins, they say, but right now they could be on top of the overall classification. They're coming up to the line, 31.16. The time to beat. Landis is the man in the front. If this is the best time, then he'll get the golden jersey, 30.45.
Yeah, but what a whopping beating it is. 31 seconds ahead of T-Mobile. That's going to put all of the riders at of the US Postal Service right at the top end of the overall classification. I can see 6 riders there who finished in exactly the same time. 7 riders actually coming across. So that is going to look a very interesting top end of the overall classification. And for Floyd Landis, what a great end to the season.
And Floyd Landis rumoured now to be going away from US Postal at the end of the year over to Phonak, the team of Tyler Hamilton. As we look now at confirmation, Postal have got the best time. They are the first winners of the team time trial today, and that means that Floyd Landis will be the rider to pull on the leader's golden jersey, his first major jersey in a major stage race at that. So US Postal, under the guidance of Johan Brunel, have made an excellent start. There is the order. Naturally enough, all of the riders who finished with Landis follow line astern in the overall classification. Well, the forecast for tomorrow, by the way, is strong gusty crosswinds. So even though the stage itself is basically for the sprinters, it's going to be a tough one to realise, I think. Erik Zabel, good start for him. He led over there the riders in T-Mobile. Onward to stage 2. There we are, right at the top of the picture, heading on now from Lyon to Burgos. We're in famous cycling country here as far as the Spanish are concerned. And this is a long distance today, 207 kilometres. There aren't too many races, stages rather, in the Vuelta, over 200 kilometres this year. Short, fast and snappy is the theory. And this, as I say, one of the hilliest races in recent years in the Vuelta. But this one shouldn't pose too many problems.
Yeah, but this is a very difficult area of Spain to race through as well. It's basically on the plateau. Most of the stages are around about 700 meters or 2,000 feet in altitude, and the winds have not split up the main field. And coming into 2 kilometers to go, we've got Team Fassa Bortolo on the front, and the reason for that is obviously to try and set up the sprint for one Alessandro Petacchi.
Yes, the man who really is on top of his form. 9 stage victories, don't forget, for him in the Tour of Italy, which was a post-war record. He currently has also won 4 stages in the Tour de France in all, and now he's looking to add to his Vuelta total. And it's a familiar sight, isn't it, with the Fassa Bortolo trying to head up the train here. This coming to the end of what is on day 2 and stage 1, the longest stage of this year's Vuelta. Get it out the way early is the attitude. The winds themselves haven't caused too much of a problem. The breakaways have all been swept up. This is a big sprint for the line for Fassa Bortolo.
Huge sprint there in 5th position there. You can just see the T-Mobile rider. That is Erik Zabel right on the wheel of Alessandro Petacchi. But this team really has become the unbelievable lead-out team of the man who is turning out to be the fastest sprinter in the world. And just a little bit further back is Oscar Freire.
Well, Erik Zabel, he almost made it this year. I've lost count of the number of second places this great German rider has had in sprint finishes. He'd just love to convert one into a win right now. He's the points winner for the past 2 years here in the Vuelta España, and a very consistent rider. But right now, he's trying to get over the top of the train here. Zabel tucked in nicely, third wheel. Sitting on the wheel of Alessandro Petacchi. Other riders trying to move up now as they sprint for the line. There are no bonuses, by the way, in the Vuelta España, so you race for real time here. It'll go on points count back amongst the postal boys if there's a jersey change, and it was easy, wasn't it? Alessandro Petacchi has opened his account like he did on the Giro d'Italia on the first road race stage.
And Stewie O'Grady wasn't very far away there either, looking for a good end to the season after winning himself an Olympic gold medal in Athens. And what a great season he's had in the latter part of the year after a very difficult start to the year for Team Cofidis with that drug scandal that involved David Miller and Philippe Gaumont and a lot of other riders on their squad.
Well, Stuart O'Grady is having a great season despite the rather shaky early April and May time. Let's have a look at the sprint again. Zabel, the eternal second, on the wheel there. Oscar Freire taking him on as well. But Petacchi has all of the answers right now. He continues his form onward into the month of September.
Unbelievable bike rider, and it's just incredible ease as he goes across the line there. And poor old Erik Zabel, as you're right, Phil, what kind of a season would he have had if there hadn't been an Alessandro Petacchi around?
Absolutely. Zabel has had one second place after another this year. He still boasts 7 wins despite that, but he got 14 last year.
Just look at this. This is an absolutely superb lead out for Fassa Bortolo. The man there just pulling off the front, in fact, is Vladimir Gustav. And watch the way he actually just opens up the gap there to allow his team leader to come through. He moves over to the left-hand side. That way, it just opens the door enough for Alessandro Petacchi to go through, which keeps the riders on his slipstream just that little bit lower, bit slower. And Erik Zabel there actually had to break a fraction. Nothing illegal about that at all. A very good tactical lead out.
Zabel's a brave cyclist, though. He went through a gap there that was closing down on him. Cost him the win for sure. Second place. And Alessandro Petacchi can't believe it as he notches another win. There's the result anyway. Zabel taking the victory, another second place rather. Freire a third. Stuart O'Grady off to a good start in 4th. Could be a battle of the sprinters this early few days. And Pedro Orillo also sprinting well there in 5th place. But the wins are mounting for Alessandro Petacchi. Picked up 30 last year. He was the year's top winner. And he's locked in battle this time around to be top winner with Tom Bonen from the Quick-Step team. The Belgian rider, he's not riding this race. Maxi van Heeswijk on count back becomes the new leader. Benoit Joachim at 2 seconds.
But it's still very much the top end of the overall classification, dominated by US Postal Service, and Erik Zabel in 8th place is the best of the rest. Nice to see Max wearing the golden jersey as leader of this great bike race, and it was in the Vuelta España a couple of years ago. He got himself a stage victory when he jumped out of the pack on the final day of racing.
That's right, and a good season, actually, one of the best seasons that Maxi's had, and looking forward to an early end to it, I think, now, because it's been a long year for him. Onwards to stage 3, onwards we go from Burgos to Sarria, 157.1 kilometres, a little bit more ripply now, and it has a rather ugly finish, this one. It's not an actual mountain, but it is a bit of a grovel up towards the finishing line in Sarria, as the race unwinds over 1 or 2 small hills in the area here. Very nice countryside. We're in that part of Spain now, in the north, as we cross from west to east.
Well, in the northern part of Spain, it always can turn out that the weather is rather treacherous, and certainly the rain in Spain has fallen on the plain here this afternoon, running into the outskirts of Soria. The main field completely together, hardly any incidents out on the route, but I tell you what, it really is starting to cause a few gaps as they come into town here on the wet surface.
Well, these are the twists and turns. The conditions really are quite dangerous, have been for most of the day today. This is the part, just like in Italy at this time of the year, in the northern parts, the rain comes down. They can expect sun as they head south, and they may get some chilly conditions too when they get down to places like the Sierra Nevada. Just look at the rain on our lenses.
That's Luca Paolini just off the front end of the main field, and if he can look back over his shoulders, you can see that the whole of the main field is starting to bore down upon him. I don't think as he heads into town here he's going to survive, because he's only got around about 10 bicycle lengths on the front end of the main field, which is actually starting to fragment just a little bit here, because you can see the accelerations coming into town.
Well, Paolini, strong rider but not a big winner. One win for him this year in a race in Belgium.
Tell you what, the road surface here is actually causing a little bit of havoc in the main field, and you can just see the split starting to appear a little bit further back. Most of the sprinters are at the front end of the peloton, and it looks to me as if one or two riders from US Postal Service have made this split at the front.
Well, this is going to be interesting, because this is a very difficult finish today. The weather is atrocious. You can tell by the gaps down there, there's people scrabbling for wheels. Interesting to see the Kelme boys have decided to try and take control of this race, because their man Alejandro Valverde has a point to prove in this race, and he's a bit unsure whether to stay with Kelme next year with the upcoming likelihood of the Pro Tour, and Kelme not part of it.
Well, although it's wet on the ground, it's actually starting to see the sunshine peek through just a fraction. This looks like Isidro Nozal on the front end of the group, trying to lead out what has started to become a rather small group off the front end of the peloton. Everybody here scrambling to stay in contact. See Stuart O'Grady in the front end of this field, and as well Roberto Heras. Heras, a very clever bike rider, realizing how important it is to stay at the front end of the main field on the run into the line like this.
They might well split time this, because they've got a definite split in the peloton, this little league group. They've completely destroyed the real sprinters, the pure sprinters like Petacchi. I would put people like Zabel, O'Grady, not pure sprinters these days, but they're going to have to work very, very hard to do something about this.
This is Alexander Vinokourov on the front, not too far back. There was Stuart O'Grady in about 4th or 5th position. There's Oscar Freire as well over to the right.
And that's Valverde gone, I think, on the left of the road. He's a good sprinter in the conditions like this, and he's being chased by Stuart O'Grady, and I think it's Denis Menchov. Valverde takes a good look to see if the effort's worth it, and it is. Valverde continues his best ever season. He gets the victory, and I think O'Grady will take second, Menchov third. And in that group as well was Oscar Freire. But surprisingly, Zabel didn't make the split.
Another man who didn't make the split either, it was the man who was the overnight leader, Max van Heeswijk. He's a little bit further back down the main field, so there's going to be a change in the overall classification. And there's Van Heeswijk just coming through there now. He's around about 15 seconds in arrears. There's the winner of the stage, Alejandro Valverde. But I think, Phil, we're going to see a new leader of the bike race, and more than likely it's going to come from somebody from the US Postal Service. It just depends which one of the US Postal guys was in that leading group.
That's right. We'll wait for the full result, and then we'll know the answer to that. There was a couple of US Postal boys in the split paying attention. Poor old Max was caught out at the back there. But Valverde continues his wonderful season here, and he's going to be delighted with this. He's come into this race third in it last year, but this time around he really has come in as quite a favourite here, and expected to take on the likes of Roberto Heras. There's Heras though, and that's a good result for Heras, taking 5th place. That's a really good result for him. Looking further down, still no US Postals in the top 10. Well, we'll wait and see who they give the jersey to, because one or two of them were in that leading group.
Good to see Stefano Garzelli at the front end. In fact, it was Benoit Joachim who was the man at the front end for US Postal Service. So for the Luxembourger, he will now take over the mantle of the golden jersey away from teammate Max van Heeswijk.
That's a great result for the former champion of Luxembourg. And Benoit Joachim here keeping the USP on top with some good tactical riding today as well. As we move on now to the 4th stage of the Vuelta, as we continue on, heading on now to Zaragoza. And a few ripples on the road today. Highlight is the 3rd category climb, but then after that we go gently downhill to complete what is just over a 100-mile stage. And in these cross rides across the top of the country, the winds can be a little bit troublesome, but basically the race itself will try and keep control of things before they start the plunge down to the mountains.
It's a very pretty part of Spain, and once again the race here dominated by the slight crosswinds, which have done nothing to split up the main field. A very large group of riders coming into town of Zaragoza, where in the past we've seen some very fast stages of the Vuelta a España. A lot of movement at the front end of the main field coming into town, a very rapid final couple of kilometres.
Well, there is the big field, 187 starting in the race. And giving a chance here once more to the big sprinters to have a go. And again, their tails are up because Petacchi will have spent a long time looking at the routes that suit him in this year's Vuelta España. And he knows they're the only stages he can play for. He'll hang on in the mountains, and the last week of this race is virtually all mountains. So any ambitions for the points competition too is you've got to get into the thick of it right now.
Well, it looks as if Fassa-Borto on the front here have not got themselves completely and utterly in control here, because in fact the rider on the front there is a T-Mobile rider, followed by a man from US Postal Service, and then it doesn't seem as if the firepower is there for Alessandro Petacchi's team. They're not completely organized on the front end of this race. That's Botero on the front there for T-Mobile. Coming up to the front now, you can see Fassa-Borto trying to take over control if they can. But it's a little bit disorganized for them at the moment. They've allowed one or two other riders to get into the front end of this main field.
And still 187. All of the starters still in this race. No retirements yet as we're moving on to day 5. Whole field here now heading into Zaragoza. Remember, Zabel has won the points on the last 2 occasions. He's mixing, but he's not yet challenging for that point. So obviously, Alessandro Petacchi is riding extremely well.
Everybody around that corner nice and safely at the front end of the main field. You can see gaps starting to appear. I think finally Alessandro Petacchi's team have got themselves in control, but there are gaps now starting to appear in the front end of this main field. Marco Zanotti is not far away either, the Vini Calderola rider in the lime yellow-green jersey. Fassa-Borto, there's Erik Zabel in 3rd position, right on the wheel of Alessandro Petacchi.
Let's just look at the speed of Petacchi here. This light lead out, boys, they've got it right again here. The face of Zabel. He's still got the perfect position. He can read a sprint so well. He can put himself in the right place. He's getting a little bit older, of course, and it's a bit more difficult to find the twitch fibers. Again, he's let Petacchi lead into the line, and he's never beaten him yet. Here he comes on his shoulder. Freire pushing as well. And as he comes to the line, it's a little bit less certain this time, but no doubt who took it. Alessandro Petacchi snatched it on the line. Erik Zabel, yet another 2nd place for this man. He's going to count all of those seconds at the end of this year, and he's going to find an awful lot. He is well into double figures in 2nd places.
This is just amazing, the speed that Alessandro Petacchi has got. As soon as he gets to the front, he just gives it full gas, and he's now taken this little habit, Phil, of looking over his shoulder to see how far behind the challengers are going to come. Erik Zabel getting 2nd place, Oscar Freire 3rd, and just a little bit out of the action, but always consistent, Stuart O'Grady coming across for 4th place.
O'Grady wearing the jersey as points leader, but he'll find now with that 2nd place to Zabel, he'll have lost his grip on that, at least for the moment. Zabel should be the new leader of the race on points, and Alessandro will slip in to 2nd place. That's O'Grady leading over Angelo Ferlan of the Alessio squad.
Just look at this, perfect lead out by the team. The last man to pull off there looks across to see that he's actually set up his man to perfection. Erik Zabel in the ideal position, and a couple of years ago, if you tried to lead Erik Zabel to the line like this, there was absolutely no way you could stop him coming by. But this man, Alessandro Petacchi, has got such an incredible turn of speed. He accelerates all the way up to the finishing line. He was challenged a fraction there, but he still gets the win by at least half a bicycle length.
And there's the result. It's only day 5, and already Petacchi has 2 wins under his belt here. Erik Zabel in 2nd place. Oscar Freire in the mix as well, with O'Grady also riding good well. This was a sprinter's paradise today. They're all there. And it looks as though Benoit Joachim has done enough to keep the lead to US Postal in that sprint finish. Will stay on top with all of their men. They're making the most of that team time trial, you see. And they've swapped it around a little bit. This is Joachim being the 3rd man to pull on the golden jersey. Van Heeswijk at 18 seconds. Beltran, Michael Barry and Floyd Landis. As we now continue on our way to stage 5 now. Goodbye to Zaragoza as we head down to Mareia. We begin to move down to the coast now. They're a long ride, 186.5 kilometers, and all of the pain comes at the end with a 2nd and a 3rd category climb up to the finish at Mareia. These are the first taste of the mountains, really. And the final climb just on 2 kilometres to bring them up to the line, but it is a very sharp climb. It should spoil the moment for the sprinters, that's for sure. And as we're heading to Aragon, the winds again will be cross.
Well, just around about 3 kilometres to go. This has been a very aggressive stage here this afternoon. After about 55 kilometres, a group of 17 riders got off the front end of the main field, and it put a lot of pressure on the peloton. It then split up a fraction towards the end, and that let a small group of 5 riders get clear, and that included Stuart O'Grady. And a lot of people were very attentive about that. In fact, they're just surviving off the front end of the main field. You can see the field has split quite dramatically. There's around about 25 seconds from the group of the leader to that front group of riders.
Well, there were 17 leaders today. They got out to quite a distance, but they've been slowly but surely reeled in. Sprinters aren't going to give away a day like this if they can afford it, but I'm afraid the end of this race, I think there'll be a complete reshaping at the front, and it won't be the sprinters who get their say today. And Kelme quite clearly feel that they have a chance here to reshape the conditions.
Very difficult running as well, with a couple of nasty little climbs on the run into town. Just 2 kilometres left to go, and it's a rather nasty finish here. As you can see, the attacks are coming very thick and fast over the front end of the main field.
Joaquin Rodriguez from Saunier Duval really giving it his best shot here, but he's not going anywhere, is he? That whole field is paying attention. It'll be hurting the back of the race, that's for sure just now. We've already had word that Scott Sunderland has abandoned the race, and also a number of T-Mobile riders gave up today. The rumour is overnight they had something bad to eat, and that in fact they're actually going to analyse the rice pudding from the hotel to see if that was the problem. Santiago Botero, Torsten Hickman and Stefan Vesserman have all gone, along with Scott Sunderland, all feeling decidedly ill this morning.
That's pretty sad. That leaves a big dent in T-Mobile. It's going to make it very difficult for Erik Zabel over the next few days, losing so many teammates in one move. Aitor Gonzalez coming across here for Fassa Bortolo in their blue and white jersey. We could see the renaissance of Aitor Gonzalez, who certainly, since he moved across to the Fassa Bortolo team, has not been the man who got himself victory in the Vuelta España a couple of years ago.
No, he had a great moment in the Tour de France this year, of course, and he did win this race in 2002. But he hasn't really sparkled since 2002.
That was Benoit Joachim there in the back end of the group, still holding on, trying to survive, and you can see what a magnificent town this is the riders are coming into this afternoon. These two have actually got a fairly serious advantage. Now this looks as if this may well be...
Nozal.
Yep, it could be coming across here. Isidro Nozal. And he's actually trying to do the work for the rest of the team here, because I think Roberto Heras is also in this group once again. Heras is being very attentive here. We're inside now the final kilometre. The two riders just off the front there are Joaquim Rodriguez and Aitor Gonzalez. You get a chance to see how nasty this finish is here in Spain.
Well, Isidro Nozal, remember him last year, he took the race lead for 16 days. He gave it away in the time trial to Roberto Heras. So what do? Well, you leave your team and you go and join the same team as Heras, and now you've got to help Heras. And it looks as though the fine, strong riding by Nozal is keeping this race almost together at least. This is an ugly little finish, isn't it now? As I say, it's not very long, but it's certainly sharp on the climb. This is Gonzalez, again stamping on the pedals. He's been joined by a few more out for the dance now, though, and this looks like Denis Menchov, who's got in just behind him.
Well, in fact, the rest of the group is not too far behind after. You can just see this is a move coming from Denis Menchov inside of 500 metres to go. Aitor Gonzalez has responded. He's still just about... No, he hasn't. In fact, Menchov has got a slight advantage there as they head into the last 400 metres.
Well, Menchov's been pretty active in this race, and he's been looking good, and he's waited for an uphill finish in which perhaps he can do something. At 300 to go, I can't see anybody get near him. 4 wins this year, started winning back in March with the 6th stage of Paris-Nice. And the field behind don't look as though they've got quite the legs required here. That's Valverde also tucked in. He is beginning to look quite a threat, but Menchov for the moment is going to be the hero of the day, and this will be a very welcome result here for the Illes Baleares team, as he can just a check over his shoulder, and then that's for me.
It certainly is. This is Aitor Gonzalez trying to get himself second place, and I think he's going to go across the line there ahead of Alejandro Valverde. There are going to be some time gaps in this stage here as well, because looking down through that line, there are not very many riders in that group. There's a couple of riders from US Postal Service, but missing is the golden jersey of Benoit Joachim, so there's going to be another change in the overall classification, but I think it will still stay with US Postal Service.
I think it will. That was Tricky Beltran who came in there, 8th or 9th, and he would be the next obvious candidate. And the way US Postal are just keeping the men there that matter, they are beginning to split up in the overall, but they are getting a lot of publicity out of this year's Vuelta already. And I think Beltran will be the next man on the team to take home a golden jersey. But there is the winner down there at the moment, Denny Menchov. 5 wins now to his credit this year, and that compares far and away his best ever season. He'd only ever won 1 in the same year before.
But look at the time gaps here. That's almost a minute back to this group. We're looking down the length of this group here to see if we can see the golden jersey. But certainly there will be a change in the overall classification. I haven't seen Benoit Joachim just yet, but he has certainly lost more than a minute in the overall classification. But for Denny Menchov, getting his team a very good win ahead of Aitor Gonzalez and Valverde, and it was Leonardo Pipoli who came across the line there in 4th place. And as you can see, there are already some pretty serious gaps at the top end of the stage. And there it is, Tricky Beltran in 9th place, so he'll be the new leader in the overall classification.
There'll also be a change in the points race, because none of the sprinters getting up there, but in fact out on the course today, O'Grady was scoring well, and he snatched back the points leader's jersey away from his arch rival, not just here but also in the Tour de France, Erik Zabel. But there's the winner of the day, 26.5 years of age, Denny Menchov. Now can add a stage win, his first ever in the Tour of Spain. He was the winner of the Tour de l'Avenir, by the way, by a single second back in 2001. And there is that confirmation. Tricky Beltran is the next leader on US Postal, but they're now beginning to get split up after the team time trial.
Well, they really do seem to be sharing it around quite a lot. It's almost becoming a US Postal benefit over the first week of racing here, and they've been able to swap and change it around. Benoit Joachim actually didn't lose that much time. He's just slipped down to 28 seconds off the top end of the overall classification.
On to stage number 6 now, and the end of the opening week of the Vuelta España. And again, a little bit of a return to flatter road with a couple of humps in the middle and one near the end of this 157-kilometre ride, taking us from Castellón de la Plana, Benicarlo to Castellón de la Plana. And this now beginning to get into rugged terrain here. An interesting stage, this one. We're heading down the Mediterranean coast. But although those hills, for me, a little bit too far out to affect the standings of the race, but we'll see.
Well, the front end of the main field looks today as if it's Cofidis are going to try and lead out Stuart O'Grady. They've just been attacked there as we go inside of 2 kilometres to go. O'Grady right at the front end of the main field. There has been a split in the main field, and once again that is really because of the weather conditions and the very tricky bit of crosswind that we had when the riders turned in from the coast just a few kilometres ago.
Well, they've come in just a little bit, and the wind is now more or less helpful for them. And still we're hearing of riders having trouble with that food poisoning saga that they had. Still 1 or 2 riders not enjoying the race at all. Andreas Clear, another T-Mobile boy, has gone now. He didn't finish. He's packed in during the day here. And also Bertoletti from Lampre has gone. So we're down to 181, but really the riders who have left the race appear to be suffering from some strange form of food poisoning.
It's always very sad when that happens at a team hotel, and that is obviously what has happened. A lot of those riders from T-Mobile have gone out with some kind of food poisoning, and it's going to be very difficult and very lonely, I would say, at the dinner table in the evenings. Cofidisville today seem to be trying to set this up for Stuart O'Grady. 1 or 2 of the sprinters have missed out on the split. There are only around about 80 riders in this leading group of riders, and as you can see, Cofidis are in complete and utter control there as we go inside of the final kilometre. And maybe Stuart O'Grady is going to get that win. O'Grady, in fact, has been swapped there, and it looks as if Erik Zabel wasn't too far away from the front end of this line.
Well, one thing's for sure, Francisco Mancebo will be the new leader. Francisco Mancebo will be the new leader in the King of the Mountains. He got the final climb today. Should be enough. Now, can O'Grady take this stage? He's getting the lead out here, and if he can, he will consolidate his lead in the points as well.
Tim, he's not actually wearing his Cofidis jersey, he's wearing the leader's jersey in the points classification, but right on his wheel there in third place is Erik Zabel. Oscar Freire not too far. On the left-hand side there for Quick-Step Davitama, it looks very much as if this could well be Tom Boonen moving up.
Well, this is an interesting race at the moment as they keep on coming up towards the line, but look at Zabel is trying again here as he goes on the right, but he's got a couple of good sprinters locked into his back wheel. O'Grady coming on the left in those unfamiliar colours of the leader of the points here, but Freire came from nowhere there and snatched it right on the line. Oscar Freire, that's his 5th win of the year. He's used to scoring a few more than that, but the win is a win. And that is what the Dutch sprinter, or rather the Spanish rider on the Dutch team wanted.
Well, that was a well-timed sprint there by Oscar Freire. Poor old Erik Zabel, second again as he crosses the line, but getting himself ahead of Stuart O'Grady. Actually, that Quick-Step Davitama rider was Pedro Horillo just over on the left-hand side. Erik Zabel has done it absolutely perfectly here, right down the middle of the road, but he can do nothing at all to stay ahead of the man just on his shoulder there, Oscar Freire, who gets himself win number 1 at this year's Vuelta a España.
And yet another second place for Erik Zabel. It is absolutely incredible. There's always one man just a little bit quicker than him this year. O'Grady's riding very well there. Good third place for him. That'll keep O'Grady in the leader's jersey on points. Mancebo now is in the King of the Mountains jersey. But the golden jersey, I think that will stay with Beltran today.
Shouldn't be any change in the overall classification. As we look at the sprint just one more time, Erik Zabel led out to absolute perfection there by his team, and now he comes right down through the middle of the main field. But just look at Oscar Freire there in second position, right on the wheel, and he uses that slipstream to catapult himself up alongside. Zabel just doesn't have that speed that he had a couple of years ago, but he is such a consistent professional, and he will make sure now that he tries to stay in the top 3 or 4 places on every one of these individual stages, because I think his goal at the end of the day, Phil, is actually to try and win the points classification here.
Well, this is a great battle in these early days of the Vuelta for the points classification, and there are 4 riders in it right now. This is the overall situation, and Beltran does keep his jersey. Floyd Landis, Menchov holds 3rd. Valverde, the big danger for the overall, is 4th. And Cadel Evans, ruining the fact he was left off the team for the Tour de France, showing pretty well here at the moment. But most of his teammates, of course, have already gone home. Onwards now to stage 7 in the Vuelta a España. And 170 kilometers as we climb up the steps here. We just go inland from the coast today as we head down to Valencia. Open countryside, mountains all around the riders. They pick a pretty undulating route as they make their journey down away from Castellón. Topping out the high spot of the day, that second category climb. And so far, the US Postal Boys have made full use of that team time trial with some very, very clever riding to keep the golden jersey in-house.
Alessandro Petacchi, followed there by Erik Zabel. Just behind him, you can just see nicking into the frame was Oscar Freire. These riders now charging into the outskirts of town. The team Fassa Bortolo once again getting themselves into that very habitual lead-out position now to try and launch their man into the ideal position to get himself the victory here this afternoon. And I think what he will try and do is use Guido Trenti as the last man to lead him out. You can see the speed here as we go inside of 2 kilometers has really stretched out the main field into one very long line.
And again, the peloton all together. One drop out along the road today, but that's about it as they're all lining up for the finish. Who's going to bet against Petacchi winning is the big question now. He's already won in history 10 stages, the Vuelta a España, and now he's going to make it one more.
Someone trying to spoil the party here on the right-hand side of the road, and they haven't got very much of a gap at all, and you can see how Fassa Bortolo have not panicked at all. They've kept the formation, they've kept as many riders to the front end of the main field as possible, and that attacker there could do nothing but put his nose into the wind, and now he has to sit up and try and get onto the back end of the main field, because just look at that acceleration, that organisation from Fassa Bortolo as we come into the final kilometre.
It is absolutely amazing, and always the wide road, a sharp right turn, narrows down a little bit, but the riders are used to that now as they head up towards the line. This is going to be another great sprint, I think, by Petacchi, perfectly positioned by his team yet again. The days of Cipollini has gone. Long live the new king of Italian sprinting, as he sits there waiting to fire, and again Zabel isn't very far away. as he looks there in the slipstream. Other riders moving up there too are Pedro Jarillo. He's sprinting very well for Quick Step at the moment, but here comes the launch now as Petacchi heads for the line, and guess who's going to get second? Because it looks like Petacchi is holding off Zabel again. Can you believe that? But Erik Zabel finishes 4th time second since this race began.
That's unbelievable. He gets himself into the ideal position every time he's on the wheel of Alessandro Petacchi, but he just cannot find that little bit of energy needed to go past the flying Italian who's earned himself this year the nickname in Italy of Ale Jet, a fantastic super sprinter. He really is very much reminiscent of Mario Cipollini of old. Once he gets to the front, it's like a drag strip race, and he keeps accelerating all the way up to the line, and nobody has the power to come by him at all.
Well, this second place at least will have some consolation for Erik Zabel, because he's got ahead of Stuart O'Grady, so the points leaders jersey will swing back to the defending champion of the competition for the last 2 years, in fact, and Zabel will be in that white fishes and blue jersey tomorrow. That should make him easy to pick out, but doesn't seem to make any difference. It's me, it's me, it's me, but we know that.
But just look at that. The radar at the side of the road has picked up the speed there of Alessandro Petacchi as he crossed the finishing line at 71 kilometers an hour. That's not far off, around about 45 miles an hour. That's unbelievable.
It is, but we should see a change in the overall leadership tomorrow now, because it's the individual time trial. There are 3 time trials this year, including a mountain time trial, which is a really tough effort. But this one is 25 miles, 40 kilometers. It'll be an individual time trial. There's the stage result, though, with Petacchi again getting a win. He's now notched another stage win in the Giro d'Italia, making it now 11 wins in the Vuelta, rather. 11 wins. He has 15 in the Giro and 4 in the Tour. That's quite an honours list, isn't it?
Well, you know, the last couple of days, Alessandro Petacchi was saying that he didn't actually feel very good. I think that has been put to one side here this afternoon, because he really has got the ideal lead out from his team, and he's got incredible form to finish off. And it's actually nice to see Alessandro Petacchi, because the thing, Phil, about Mario Cipollini, he used to ride the Tour of Italy and possibly the Tour de France and then pack up for the season. Petacchi is very much like Erik Zabel. He wants to be present throughout the whole of the season.
Well, what does Zabel think when he looks across? That man again has just taken him out and spoilt his grand moment. Zabel, without Petacchi in this race, would have been running away with the points competition. Petacchi, you see, only goes for the win, and then he drops. If he's not in for the win, he doesn't score any points either, because he doesn't contest the finishes. Whereas Zabel stays Mr. Consistent, and that has given him the points competition lead for the moment. Let's have a look at the overall. So Tricky Beltran takes us to the time trial, or the eve of the time trial, with Landis in second place, and Landis can ride a time trial. Denny Menchov, Valverde and Cadel Evans, the top 5.
Well, there he is, Tricky Beltran, on the eve of a very important rendezvous for him. And I know Lance Armstrong has been on the phone almost every night to most of these riders, just to give them a word of warning and a word of good luck.
Well, they're needed today now as we move on to stage 8. The first race of truth, of which there are 3, and that's in comparison to the Giro d'Italia, where there was only one very late on this year. Pretty similar to the Tour de France, when they didn't have their first time trial till the climb of Alpe d'Huez. 40 kilometres, almost exactly 25 miles, so we should see them getting in around 54 minutes, I suspect. It doesn't look as though there's too many typographical problems out on the course. There's Beltran. He will be the last man to start, and I think that's probably the first time in his life he'll have started last as leader of a major race.
A very nervous moment for him. You can see he's got it right over to the middle of the cluster here for the start, and he's going to try and get up to top speed as quickly as possible. Now rolling down the starting ramp for what is going to be a very important individual time trial for him. He's locked at the start of the day here in exactly the same time as his own teammate Floyd Landis. I do have to say, I think I would give the advantage to Landis, who is a very good individual time trialist and is on great form at the end of this season.
Well, Manuel Beltran continuing now underway. We'll update you with the race situation in a moment as we continue now to look at the Illes Baleares team here. This is Francisco Mancebo. First chance to see the King of the Mountains leaders colours, but that's the jersey he's wearing just now. He is being viewed as a big favourite. If he can stay near the front in the time trials, he's expected to challenge as we get down into that crucial last week of the high mountains. And the next time trial is all uphill in the Sierra Nevada, so that'll be a tough one. Here's Nozal. First rider through here at the moment is held by David Plather, 36.22, and it looks as though Nozal, who lost this race in the final time trial last year, is going to go through best time so far.
Well, there is 31 seconds faster, but let's not forget that final time trial where he lost his overall lead was slightly nastily uphill. There at the 13-kilometre time check, Tyler Hamilton has gone through with the best time, just ahead of Victor Hugo Pena, and Mancebo not too far off the mark there, Phil, in 9th place, just 20 seconds in arrears.
16 minutes for 13 kilometres. Hamilton is absolutely flying here. Olympic time trial champion, and that is probably what he's telling himself throughout the pedal revs. Champions don't get beaten, maybe. He's going to give this his best shot. Ruben Plaza, not David, sorry, he's coming in now, and Ruben Plaza had the best time at 13 kilometres. That's been surpassed, but this should be the best time for the moment, because Grabsch of Germany is in 48.32. It's not going to be much of a beating, but it's going to be a beating. He crossed the line with the best time, 48.21.
Yeah, but look at that average speed, 49.8 kilometres an hour. That's almost 31 miles an hour. A bit further out on the course, this is Alejandro Valverde. It'd be interesting to see how he's going to perform. He's lost about 24 seconds at the first time check. He's a great sprinter. He's a man that many people think in the future has got a good chance of winning the Vuelta a España overall. But as with many of these Spanish riders, they really need to concentrate on their aerodynamic positions to improve their time trialling ability.
Well, this looks like we've got Roberto Heras here at kilometre 30, and for him, this is a very, very good time trial.
Well, Roberto is not very good and not very comfortable on the individual time trials unless they're going uphill. He's going to go through there with the 7th best time. He's actually lost himself about 50 seconds there to Isidro Nozal, and that is going to be a fair beating.
It's interesting that, but look at this now. Floyd Landis has toppled Hamilton off the pile by 4 seconds at 13 kilometres. Now, that is a surprise. Next year, Landis and Hamilton will be teammates on Phonak, but for the moment, Landis is attacking Hamilton's time, 16.17. Now, if he rides like that, Landis will be back in the golden jersey.
He'll be the top man, but we're still waiting to see the time here of Tricky Beltran. Beltran, not one of the great individual time trialists in the world, but he actually looks very good on his machine there, nice and aerodynamic.
This looks like Nozal, is it?
This is Nozal coming up, and he's going to try and knock Plaza's time off the top end of the overall classification. I think he's going to certainly do that. The time to beat is 48 minutes and 21 seconds, and I think Isidro Nozal is going to go inside of 48 minutes here.
Well, it is amazing, because last year he lost the Tour in the time trial. It was a hilly one, I have to admit. This is a lot flatter, and he is showing that he can ride the flat time trials quite quickly as he comes home. Best time, he's toppled the 50-kilometre mark for the average, 47.53.9. Well, that's a good time, that.
Here's Tyler Hamilton coming up now, and let's see what his time is going to be at the next time check. He's got a very strange position on that machine of his, and he's going through there with the new best time at 30 kilometres, 35 minutes and 37 seconds for the Olympic time trial champion.
Well, that's the way to go, and that's setting himself up for the win unless Floyd Landis maintains his rides at the checkpoint, and Landis riding extremely well.
Well, there's a lot of rumours about the fact that he will be changing teams throughout the winter months to go across to ride for Team Phonak, and I'm not sure that I think that's a very wise thing to do at the moment. We've seen so many of Lance Armstrong's top men leave the team and go to ride and on their own account as team leaders, and not one of them really yet seems to have found himself an awful lot of success. Victor Hugo Pena, he's coming through here. This is going to be a good time for Victor Hugo Pena. Hamilton has the best time at that point, and Pena has just gone through just 5 seconds off in a time of 35 minutes and 42 seconds.
Well, Pena, don't forget, briefly led the Tour de France last year, and I think this is the best teamwork we've seen with them throwing the jersey around probably since that time when they waited for the jersey to finally settle on Lance Armstrong's shoulders. But here they've all had a scent of the golden jersey, and if the pace is kept up by Landis, it's going back. Carlos Sastre here now, also a man for the Vuelta, and trying to fly the flag for CSC. And is he going to do it this time? He's not going to come through with the best time, that's for sure. Bert Grabsch, who was the early leader, down to 4th. But now Sastra's gone over him with third for the moment.
Well, that's a good ride by Sastra, because he's a man who was much more at ease in the big mountain passes, so I think he'll be fairly happy with that. But this is a great ride by number 1, Roberto Heras. Heras is not good at the flat time trials, but here, Phil, he's going to get himself a top 10 finish with a ride like this.
I think this has been exceptional for Heras, and I think this is augured well for him to ride a great ride to the mountains. The defending champion is looking pretty sharp. He hasn't made any mistakes yet. When he's seen groups going away at the sprints, he's made sure he's been in them. He had a terrible Tour de France. His tour was over before we even saw a mountain this year. They're destroyed by the teamwork of US Postal. 25 minutes down before he got to the mountains. But this time is good. A 7th place for Heras is a great time.
It's a great ride by Roberto Heras, just a minute behind Isidro Nozal, but there are some very fast times being posted out on the open road at kilometre 30. This is Francisco Mancebo. Again, a very good climber, not a great individual time trialist, but today, Phil, a lot of the climbers are actually posting very fast times. They realise how important the time trial is, and they seem to be rising to the occasion. Last man on the road, Tricky Beltran. He has an absolutely superb position. You know, a lot of time and money has been spent by US Postal Service in wind tunnels throughout the years at MIT to try and get their riders as aerodynamic as possible on their machines, and it is certainly starting to pay dividends.
Well, as they continue here, Beltran in the yellow strip pushes on, last man to sweep up. Aitor Gonzalez, good time trialist, but compare that with the ride of Heras, and I would say that's not a good ride by Aitor.
I think a little bit disappointing, but look at this. Tyler Hamilton is coming in. It's a very strange style Hamilton has. He's all over his machine. He's looking at the time of Isidro Nozal as the time to beat, 47.53, and he's going to do that with an unbelievable lashing of Isidro Nozal's time.
Welcome home, the Olympic champion, Tyler Hamilton. Best time, 47.16. But we must remember that right up there, beating him at the early checks, is Floyd Landis.
Well, that is a huge beating there. First at the finish line for the moment, Tyler Hamilton, 47.16, 37 seconds faster than Isidro Nozal, but there are still a number of riders from US Postal to come in. And look at this man here, Victor Hugo Pena. He's going to challenge the time here of Tyler Hamilton. It's going to be very close indeed. This man has been an individual time trial winner in the Giro d'Italia in the past. And Phil, this is going to be so close, but he's actually just gone outside the time of Hamilton.
Well, that is an exceptional ride by Victor Hugo Pena, the man from Colombia who loves to fly the flag around the rest of the world for US Postal, delivers the goods when it matters, was the surprise leader of the Tour de France last year, but that is a great result. He hasn't won a race this year, but that's not his job. He's in now, 2nd place behind Hamilton, and it looks as though Landis has slowed.
Well, he went out very fast indeed, but in fact he's gone through the 30-kilometre check there in just 3rd place, only 12 seconds behind Tyler Hamilton, but he does have the ability to pick it up. He may well not be too worried about the performance of Hamilton, because what's more important for him, Phil, is to finish in front of his own teammate, Manuel Beltran, who is the last man out on the road. He now looks to be that little bit more laboured. Look how far forward he's starting to sit on the saddle. He's trying to get the power into those thighs to keep that big gear ticking over. These riders are all riding here at an average of around about 31 miles an hour.
And Mancebo coming in here now, still lying in 3rd place, but he's going to shortly drop behind the time of Nozal. And they should be okay. He should make a 4th place finish here. He should stay ahead of Platza. But Mancebo looking very sharp as we go down towards the mountains, and it's to be seen as a great ride by Francisco. He'll just stay clear for 4th, 48.13. Just inside the 50-kilometre-an-hour average. Been a rough day for Tricky Beltran. He's worn the jersey for a while, but at least the way things are going at the moment, Landis will take it back and keep it in camp.
Well, there's 16 seconds between Landis in 3rd place and Beltran in 5th place. So for the moment, the overall classification looks very much like Landis will be the new leader at the end of the day. Tyler Hamilton, though, has roared around this course, 25 miles in 47 minutes and 16 seconds. That is in excess of 31 miles an hour.
Well, we expect that from the Olympic champion, don't we? It was a great ride. He came so fast in the last quarter of the Olympic Games time trial, made tremendous ground to be the only man to climb over the Sydney champion Vyacheslav Yekimov, who was his teammate, of course, when they were both together on US Postal. This is the last Grand Tour for US Postal, and what a way to say goodbye to the sport for the sponsorship. because they have held the lead now as we halfway into the second week of the Vuelta.
Landis picking his way around that corner. I tell you what, he seems to know this course absolutely perfectly, because he used all of the road there to make sure he didn't lose any impetus at all. And that, I think, is something which is very important really about a man like Johan Brunel, because he is such a technician. He takes so much time to make sure that his riders are perfectly prepared for individual time trials. Alejandro Valverde coming in with what is going to be a very respectable time. He will go outside the time of Francisco Mancebo, but he's not going to lose that much time to Tyler Hamilton.
But on a flat time trial, what this time trial is doing is projecting the projected climbers, where the men we expect to excel in the mountains, but they are all turning in an extremely good race against the watch here, which is only going to leave us with a very tight general classification. And frankly, this time trial's told us not a lot.
It hasn't told us anything at all, and I'm actually quite amazed at the performances of the climbers, who are all racking themselves up in the top 10 or 15 places. Valverde crosses the line in 10th place, and again you see, look at that average speed, 49.3 kilometers an hour, but a minute and a half loss to Tyler Hamilton. This looks like Landis.
It is indeed. Now let's get the clock on the screen and see how he's going. There's the time of Hamilton. It's going to be close. I don't think he can get there in about 10 seconds to the line. It looks as though Hamilton will win the stage, but Landis needs a good time now, as close as he can get to Tyler, because these two boys, once teammates and now to be teammates again next year, are split, but they're both from the USA, and it looks as though Landis is going to reclaim the golden jersey, albeit from his teammate Manuel Beltran. He still sits second as he comes up to the line. He should get there nicely, but it'll be tight. No, he's gone down to third, 47.34.8. Third place, very fast start by Landis. Lost it a little bit over the last 10 miles or so.
Well, I tell you what, Manuel Beltran hasn't done a bad ride either, because he's posted some pretty good checks out on the course. He was 5th at the last time check, not too far behind his own teammate, just separated by 16 seconds. So he will have to do something very special if he's going to stay in the golden jersey this afternoon. I don't think he will be able to, but I tell you what, that really is turning out to be a very close battle between US Postal Service riders. Menchov, by the way, started out of his role here. He should have started third from the back, but they actually separated the two riders from US Postal. And there is Beltran. What a ride.
Well, take my hat off to him there. He's had a nice carrot out on the course. We didn't see him catching on those long straight roads, but that is an excellent performance to get close to Denny Menchov, as he comes in only 26th place, which is going to be a very fine run-in for the yellow jersey. It's true what they say, pull on the golden fleece, it turns you into two men. That's a 4th place finish for Beltran, and it's going to be tight. He may not have lost his lead here.
I will do. Look at that. The difference between the two of them is 10 seconds. And that really is quite a remarkable comeback for Beltran, because he was 16 seconds down at the 30-kilometer time check and only 10 seconds down on his teammate Landis at the finishing line. That was a great recovery by a man who is reputedly not a great individual time trialist.
2nd, 3rd and 4th for US Postal, behind another American, Tyler Hamilton from Phonak. And I think it's close, but I think it'll just fade away slightly in favour of Landis. There's the Phonak boy on the podium. Olympic time trial champion Tyler Hamilton takes a rather splendid trophy there. A little book to read when he's got nothing to do when he goes to bed tonight. As he prepares now, he'll be happy with that. He came here with no big ambition, to do his best, he said, and as a result he's done his best. There it is, and it is those 10 seconds. The 10 seconds lost in the time trial to Landis has reversed the situation overall. Floyd Landis gets the golden jersey back, and Hamilton now up into 3rd.
Well, Valverde not too far away either. He stays in the top 10 in 6th place. Benoit Joachim didn't ride an excellent individual time trial, but he still managed to keep himself up in the top 10 in the overall classification.